held as required by the provisions of Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws of the Commonwealth, an act relative to the protection of the wetlands, as most recently amended. Notice of the time and place of this hearing was originally published in the Fairhaven Neighborhood News on November 17, 2022. It's also posted in the town clerk's office, and our ethics laws state that I have to let you know that this is being broadcast, and also will be available for future viewing. Persons wishing to be called, let me try that again in English. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. We're going to start with the minutes for approval from November 30th. And I've reviewed those, I know you did, a couple others. Anybody, comments, questions, or you want to make a motion to approve as presented?
I'll make a motion to. I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, thank you. Meeting mail, we have a letter from Andrew Babola, who is building commissioner regarding 42 South Main Street. So, Pat, you want me to read that, or do you want to take that?
I'll give you the pleasure.
Okay, how about that? So this is dated December 20th of 2022 to Tucker Roy Marine Towing and Salvage, Conrad Roy, President of 56 Ocean Drive, Mattapoisett. Dear Mr. Roy, property under your control at 42 South Main Street is being used for the open storage of junk and unregistered vehicles, which is against the Acushnet zoning laws. The commercial portion of the lot extends only 300 feet in depth from the layout of South Main Street, which means you are currently using that portion of the lot located in the residential zone. Provisions of the law allowing use of the property required a setback of 25 feet from the residential district, allowing the use of only 275 feet from the South Main Street layout. Under the bylaws for the village business zone, uses regulated and allowed are, this is Article 8, 3.3.2, B, permitted uses up to 3,000 square feet. Section 9, light manufacturing, processing and research not hazardous or detrimental to the neighborhood. Section 10, storage and distribution warehouses, subject to reasonable screening and landscape requirements. And Section 12, sale or storage of fuel, lumber, building materials, and equipment, contractor's yard. And there's Article 16, junk dealers, Section 1, the open display or open storage of junk is prohibited on any premises except as provided through licensure and under Acushnet general laws. Use of the property at 42 South Main Street must cease as currently being used immediately and brought into conformance through either licensure or enclosed structure, and that is from Andrew Babola, building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer, CC'd on the Board of Selectmen, Board of Health and Conservation.
So the reason we received that is there's some Board of Health things going on over there in the near future as well. There's dumpsters there that are loaded with things that may be discharging contaminated stormwater out of the dumpsters under the ground. So that was to let us know that he's finally taken action. The last building inspector wouldn't take any action over there. This should come to a head pretty quickly.
Is there anybody here with questions, comments, feedback on this topic? So obviously, Mr. Roy's been notified, and so action may happen, so great.
Yes.
Any other meeting mail we should know about?
The letter from Terry Quintal about the bridge project.
Yeah. I want to elaborate. I saw it about 5:15, and I sent.
Yeah, so Everett met me over there for a site visit with the contractor, and the contractor just thinks he's exempt from everything. And he did contact MassDOT. MassDOT sent us that email that they're exempt from almost everything. And then Sarah looked into it, and it turns out that Fisheries and Wildlife is involved in this. They're concerned about how the fishway is constructed. That's the one thing the contractor's trying to change. They want to change the design of the fishway to shorten the project from 3 years to 1 year. I didn't have time to alert Sarah to that, but I'm going to bomb their meeting tomorrow and show up, and Everett's going to come because it's right across from his house.
Now, is the plan to change it's not like a way that it would have.
That's the contractor's plan.
Right, that it would have a negative impact on the ability of the anadromous fish to be able to get upstream.
It may, yes. In Sarah's letter, she said that those were specifically built, a specific way to a critical tolerance, and they were cast in place, and this contractor wants to put in precast and just install them. He wants to stop the flow in the river and do it in the dry. The job is designed to be done in the wet.
So, and whose meeting is happening tomorrow?
It's Wildlife and Fishery and possibly Army Corps of Engineers. They're gonna talk about their water quality, sir. So, but nothing's flagged out there. When we met with him, he's putting his construction trailer in a wetland. He was under the impression that White's factory was an abandoned site. He wanted to lay his materials down there. He wouldn't give up on that one, but he did. And then they had a meeting after we left with DEP. They didn't let us stay for their meeting with DEP. So I'm just gonna show up for the fisheries and wildlife. And say, yeah.
You said you're popping into that too?
Yeah, I didn't see if Sarah said what time it was.
Okay.
But we'll get in touch with Everett in the morning.
Anybody here, comments, questions, feedback about that project? Okay, good.
And then one other piece of mail I got is the building commissioner has issued a cease and desist order for 550 Main Street, Madison's project, for violations of the special permit.
And so how, I don't know that everybody here knows it, well, maybe you did from Saturday site visit, that we have a new building commissioner in town here.
Yes.
So, if you want to just let us know who that is, I guess.
So it's Andy Babola. He was the building commissioner in Mattapoisett for 34 years. He had some health issues, had a leg amputated and had to take some medical leave off. Decided to retire from that job. And because our charter calls for a commissioner and not a local inspector, we had to hire a commissioner. They couldn't find anybody for what they wanted to pay. And they worked something out with Andy to work for the next couple of years, as long as he can. And his first order of business was, from the selectmen, was to take care of South Main Street, and he did. And his next order of business from the planning board was to take care of 550 Main Street, and he did.
Okay.
And talking to Jeff Blake, Jeff Blake was town council in Mattapoisett, knows him well, and it says he's no shrinking violet. He's not afraid to do his job. And that's good.
Great. Thank you. Okay, on to old business. So continue, we have a public hearing, NOI Frank P. Joseph Jr., 352 Main Street, SE 001-0577. Notice of intent was filed by Frank P. Joseph Jr. for property located at 352 Main Street, map 11, lot 28. The applicant proposes a septic system upgrade within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by David J. Fredette of Fredette Engineering Services, and the plan name is Site Plan for Septic System Upgrade dated August 31 of 2022. Are we continuing this again? Or
No, so the septic system was denied by the Board of Health. They rejected the plan. There are over 20 deficiencies in the plan. So my recommendation is to deny it for more information. He'd be able to come back and apply for an amended order of condition, amended NOI. And the fee is less if there's any fee than, having to do it all over again.
Right.
And I think even if it was, the commission has the ability to waive the fee because he's already paid it when we get there. He just hasn't designed one of these nitrogen systems and bottomless filters, and he didn't quite get it. So he's gonna get some help from another engineer and come back in a couple of months. He tried.
Okay. You put in a Commission with questions for Pat about that?
So you would need to vote.
Yeah.
So you would need to actually open that public hearing
Mhm.
and then deliberate
Sure.
as to whether or not you got sufficient information.
All right, so now that we've heard that, I'm going to ask for a motion to reopen this public hearing, which had been continued from before.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so we've heard all the details as to the file number and the lot numbers and all of that. Anybody here with questions, comments, concerns about this project? Okay. So, and having heard what we heard from the agent, I'll entertain a motion then to deny the issue or, deny the NOI and then see if they come back.
For lack of information.
For lack of information, to see if they come back with an amended notice of intent.
So moved.
And
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor
Aye.
of deny?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstaining? Okay, that's unanimous.
Motion to close
Thank
public
you.
hearing.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the next one on here, and we'll decide if we need to reopen this one. So this is a continued public hearing of Weldon Lane Historic Trail.
Don't need to reopen that, so pass over for now.
Right, okay. So new business, we have a certificate of compliance for CS Energy LLC, 88 Wing Lane. The file number is SE001-0576. A certificate of compliance was filed by Eric James, CS Energy LLC, for property located at 88 Wing Lane, map 14, lot 21. The applicant constructed a solar field and installation of 4 drainage stone trenches within the 100-foot zone of a bordering vegetated wetland.
So we did the site visit. It was, as we thought. The repairs are nothing, huge, but it worked.
Right.
It looks a lot better than it did, and I think it's the best it's gonna get. We got what we needed out of that whole thing.
Right, and looking at the minutes from November 30th, you said it passed the wet weather test.
It did pass the weather test. There's no more ponding under the array and any of that stuff. It's making it to the forebay. The forebay's functioning.
Mhm.
They cleaned up their connection they made to the wetland.
Mhm.
It looks good.
Anybody else on the site visits, comments, questions, feedback?
Looks functional.
Anybody here regarding 88 Wing Lane? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That's unanimous. Okay, next order of conditions. This is an order of conditions extension for Navison LLC doing business as Acushnet Mass 1 LLC, 355 Main Street. A request for an extension to an existing order of conditions, file number SE001-0504, for property located at 355 Main Street. The applicant proposed to construct a 1.1 megawatt AC, alternating current, solar array with associated gravel, access drive, security fence, and stormwater management facilities within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and a perennial stream. The applicant is represented by Weston and Sampson Engineers Incorporated. A 3-year extension is requested. Floor is yours.
Hi everyone, Rob Bukowski with Weston Sampson, representing Navison. Excuse me, so I think most of you are probably aware the site's at 355 Main Street. It's the former driving range that's out there. Construction's been ongoing. The existing order of conditions is good through January 28th of this year. So construction, all the racking's up, modules should be going up over the next couple weeks. So the idea is to finish construction over the next month or so, do final restoration in the spring, and then hopefully close out from there. So I know in the original request we sent, we had requested a 3-year extension. We're really just asking for a 1-year extension. That should give us plenty of time to get everything finished up, all the restoration in place, make sure everything's stabilized, remove ENS controls, and then close everything out.
That's very realistic. The job's going well. Everything looks good there. It's only missing one thing. They're missing their sign required by NIPD's. I stopped at the site and asked them to get it put up. But other than that, everything's going good.
That's going up.
Yeah.
That has been installed, that was installed today.
We did make the
CPP
sign.
Correct.
Awesome.
Yep.
If you guys would let us know when you get that stuff done,
Yep.
just so.
No, but that wasn't part of the site visits, was it?
What was that?
Was that 355 part of the site visits on Saturday?
No.
No.
It was 88 and 550. Okay. I don't know if anybody else here has questions.
There was no real ground disturbance there. They drove their post through the existing
Yeah.
turf, and that really simplified that whole job there, so.
Yeah, because there was no real tree cutting happening,
Yeah.
it was already cleared to be a driving range.
Yep.
Anybody here with questions, comments, anything for our engineer here? Okay, in that case, I'll entertain a motion to issue a one-year extension to the order of conditions for 355 Main Street.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on here is an enforcement order for Navasun LLC for 550 Main Street, Wetlands Protection Act and NIPD's violations. Vote to ratify enforcement order, review of matters presented, votes may be taken. I'm going to turn this over to you, Pat.
Yeah, so, if you remember, at, I think our last meeting, I read something about why the commission has jurisdiction to require the notice of intent. And I've got a picture of 582 Main here, next to Rochelle's. And 582 Main is on the left side, it's kind of a odd-shaped house. And if you go into the backyard here, where you see the green in the middle of the screen, that's actually some algae in the pond at 582. So that's where the pond is, but I want you to see that that pond connects to a wetland system. And there's quite a wetland system there that eventually goes out to the road, goes under a culvert, goes under the blue lantern, and according to their SWIP, discharges to the Acushnet River. So, based on the Wetlands Protection Act, activities outside the area subject to protection under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the buffer zone, any activities proposed or undertaken outside the area specified in 310 CMR 10.02 paren 1 and outside the buffer zone is not subject to regulation under MGL Chapter 131, Section 40, and does not require the filing of a notice of intent unless and until that activity actually alters an area subject to protection. The discharge from the site altered the pond, altered the wetland, altered the pond next door, and based on the volume of water that came off the site, it has to have gone under the blue lantern, has to have gone down that stream, and it's jurisdictional. So I'm dug in on the notice of intent. At the site visit on Saturday, I asked Mark Anderson, the project manager for Navasun, there were two things in the order. One was to file a notice of intent after the fact, and the other was to provide a corrective action plan. So I asked at the site visit, while we were standing on top of one of the basins, if he was filing the corrective action plan, and the answer was a very abrupt no. And then I asked if they would be filing the notice of intent, and the answer was a very abrupt no. So at that point, Navasun's not interested in cooperating in this. It's jurisdictional. It was affected by the discharge. And rather than go through an hour of he said, she said, I'm going to ask you to ratify my enforcement order. They can appeal the enforcement order, and they can appeal it to DEP for superseding order of conditions. And I brought this up at the Board of Health meeting last night. I would welcome DEP to get involved in this. So if they don't want to do what the commission says, bring it on. And the only thing on the agenda for this is to ratify the enforcement order. We could get into the nitty-gritty when they file a notice of intent, and we want to talk about special conditions and other things. So, just so you know, the planning board asked for a cease and desist. The Board of Health has a cease and desist. The Conservation Commission has a cease and desist. I haven't written a stormwater cease and desist quite frankly, because we've been too busy and we've written enough. We have the job stopped. And they said last night at the Board of Health meeting that they were now accepting responsibility. You know, we did it. It's, you know, it was our water. You know, we hooked up the water. We want to work with you. I mentioned to the Board of Health that they were refusing to comply with my enforcement order, and they didn't offer anything at that meeting. But maybe they want to comply tonight.
I'm gonna ask my commission members if they have comments, anything from what you saw on Saturday, 'cause I'm curious, obviously we're not able to be there.
Well, the site was pretty good. The only thing that I saw, I just haven't seen the plans to this job originally because it was never in our jurisdiction, so for me to really speak on it, I don't know, I just like to know what caused it, but the temporary, from what I've been told, the temporary basin that was put in the southwest corner, that wasn't stabilized with erosion controls. That was really the only thing that I saw. But, you know, outside of those basins, there was no runoff. All the sediment controls looked good. Everything was pretty good. It was like kind of soupy, you know, I walked around a little bit, but
A lot of it you walked around.
But there was, you know, there was a rain event the day before, I think, so, yeah.
So to Ryan's comment, when we were at the site, thank you, there was one basin in the project, and I'm gonna get to why this happened. There was one basin, the one that's over by the Walsh's property. It says clearly in the stormwater pollution prevention plan and clearly in the plans for the job, and I brought the planning board plans, but they're not as clear as what's in their SWIP. And it said that the detention basin during the construction period was intended to be a sedimentation basin. And it would be blocked so that it did not discharge any stormwater until the stormwater was settled out and was treated. They installed the basin with the outlets. They didn't make it a sedimentation basin, they immediately put the 4 pipes in there and they let it rip. That's a mistake by Navason's engineers and project manager. They should have overseen how that was built. They should have inspected it before it was allowed to go online. And it went online. And that's what caused it. And now they want to tell us that, you know, they're doing us a favor by working Saturdays and being out there at 5:30 in the morning and making all these repairs. It's their mistake. They're not doing us any favor. If they followed their work plan from their engineers and their design, it would have never happened. So,
And I know in the past, we've had instances in the past where plans, not never, plans that have ended up at Board of Health or Planning
Yeah.
are not the same as what ends up in front of us.
and that's happened here as
Okay.
well. So these plans didn't wind up in front of us.
Right.
They went to plan
Because the original
right.
would not have.
It was waived off.
Yeah.
But it should have been. And the project was sold, and then plans were modified. The SWIP was an original SWIP was in the name of the other company, but was in draft form, and didn't identify anybody or anything. I have the SWIP now, right here from Bates, and the SWIP was issued in, I think, August, 9/12/2022. And when I contacted Rob Bukowski from Weston and Sampson, I explained to him that I had a draft one made up to Collective Energy, Clean Energy Collective, and that I hadn't seen this. Rob said he left it at a meeting that I had with himself, Pat Mahan from Bates, I don't know if he's here. And I don't recall getting that SWIP at that time. But what I want to call your attention to is that their SWIP team, stormwater team, only lists Joe Scott, the construction manager for Navason LLC, and his responsibilities are SWIP inspections. At the site, on Saturday site visit, I asked Mark Anderson, the project manager, have the inspections been done? And he said, yes, they've been done. And I said, so who does the inspections, Joe Scott? And he said, no, that Weston and Sampson is on the SWIP team, and that they do the inspections with Joe Scott. But that's not what their SWIP says. Weston and Sampson's nowhere in the SWIP as being part of the SWIP team. Maybe there's been an amendment and we haven't received it. I don't know. So, Joe Scott, construction manager, qualified compliance inspector for stormwater, lists all the things he learned, but those things weren't applied at the job. This was a total failure by the field personnel to monitor the activities of Bates. And I don't blame Bates for 95% of this. I think they were set up to fail. I don't think they got the proper inspections or proper instructions. And as we get into this, and I'm not going to show you the whole 187 pages, I assure you.
Thank you.
But here they ask about pollution generating activities. And they identified soil erosion, vehicle fluids, sewage, fuel. They identified what the problems could be. And an important point to bring up is there is a constructional general permit inspector's certification that EPA does. I took the test over the Christmas break on December 28th, and it turns out that Ryan took it as well. So you have two people on the commission that are certified construction general permit inspectors under the EPA policy. And that was very enlightening to me of just how many of and they may consider them to be small things, but for me, if you don't do the small things, I'm really worried about the big things. So there were, the original start date was September, in their SWIP, was September 19th, 2022. And the estimated end date of construction activities for the first phase was October 18th. And the first phase was really putting in their erosion controls and basins and getting all of that done. In the special permit from the planning board, there's no tree cutting after October 31st. Because you can't stabilize this land in the wintertime. You can't grow grass. And this project started November 1st, after the timeline. And I think that's part of what led to all the stormwater racing across the site. They didn't build the basin properly. They left it open to discharge. And for the second discharge, they said, geez, we reduced the inlets on the pipes so that less water went through. But they have a design from their engineers and a plan that says it's not gonna discharge water. So I don't know if they ever figured that out, that they missed their whole design and that it wasn't supposed to discharge water. It's blocked off now, it doesn't discharge water. But this is a major oversight by Navison. Then they did all their natural heritage stuff and historic property screenings. Something I'm unsure about at this point, I'm waiting for some feedback, is about drinking water protection. This talks about underground injection controls, but it also talks about infiltration from trenches. And there's been some trenches dug out there. And Article 9 of the town's bylaws for soil preservation requires a 4-foot separation to spring high groundwater. And they're in violation of that part of our soil conservation bylaw. They're in groundwater with some of their work. And I think they missed that in setting up their project and doing their due diligence. They talk here about the silt fences being installed, all of that. That was done. It was done well. And then, in accordance with the CGP, they had to put in their construction entrance. The construction entrance, I inspected it and passed it. But since taking the certification test, it's not properly constructed. There's a silt fence missing, and it's not graded properly to drain to the right side of the property. There are, in Navison's plans that were approved by in Clean Energy Collections plans that Navison bought the project, the details of the construction entrance show a different way to build the construction entrance. And then stockpiles, land cleaning debris, and in accordance with the CGP, if stockpiles are unused for 14 or more days, cover or appropriate temporary stabilization shall be required. They failed to do that as well. And this is another failure by the Navison oversight crew in the field. Then there's no issues with dust. Vegetative cover. Minimize areas of disturbance as reasonably practicable. Apply seed following disturbance to vegetated areas for permanent stabilization. Most practical method for disturbed areas not subject to traffic. This project started in November. There's no way to grow grass. There's no way to vegetate this. And even their plans from Weston and Sampson point out the fact that you need to disturb the ground at the time of the year that you can vegetate the land within the times required in the CGP. And that wasn't done. They ignored the engineer.
Well, I would say there, I mean, there's still traffic. They have equipment on site, and they're gonna install the array, you know.
But they opened 19 acres all at one time. It should have been done in a phased. As you get deeper into it, I read the whole CGP several times, just to make sure that I really don't doubt myself. And the whole thing here from the construction general permit is to eliminate stormwater impacts, and to have you get certified so that when this does happen, they can say, you knew better, you took the test, and we'll take action. The basin, they installed a second basin as part of their let's try and stop another off-site excursion. It says in some emails that basin's been, has erosion control mats and has been sprayed with mulch. We stood on it. It's not. We were standing on dirt. Not done. And I still don't think it's done today. Oh, I don't want to do that. So, all disturbed areas shall be revegetated and steep slopes shall be protected in accordance with CGP Part 2.2.7, and that's where it talks about erosion control blankets. And these guys are experts in the construction general permit. They've passed the test. Then specific steep slope controls. Erosion control blankets are to be installed on any disturbed slopes 3 to 1 or greater to prevent erosion during construction and facilitate revegetation after placement of topsoil and seed. At the Board of Health meeting last night, Dave DeVignan brought up the fact that the second base they put in was very big and very steep. It hasn't been stabilized. Just another thing. And then in the new CGP for 22 that got approved, EPA says that because contractors haven't been making the reports they're supposed to make and doing the inspections they're supposed to do, they changed the rainfall requirements and reporting requirements to 1/4 of an inch of rain requires a full inspection of all your erosion controls and basins and a report. And I don't know if that's been done. I was going to amend my enforcement order when I heard that they weren't going to obey our order. So I was going to amend that order to request all of these things that they haven't given us. I called our circuit rider. I haven't heard back from our circuit rider yet. So if they agree to file a notice of intent, that can be taken care of when we go through the notice of intent. But we're going to want to see all of those things, so they're doing those inspections. And then the next, and I will tell you that in my career as a contractor, I never filed one. Nobody does. And it's kind of low-hanging fruit when you go out on an enforcement action to say, I'm looking for your stormwater reports and your maintenance logs and these things, and they go, and now they're kind of on the defensive. Your enforcement action moves a little further. But this is a clear effort by EPA in the 2022 permit to get quarter-inch reports, and they want to enforce it. That's my take on taking the exam. So then on soil compaction, under the CGP, it says that vehicles and equipment shall only be used in the areas required to minimize soil compaction. And it says in their work plan that they're gonna minimize soil compaction while they do this job, but they didn't. And this is a Bates thing, but Navison didn't stop Bates from doing it. They ran 60,000-pound excavators, they ran rubber-tired 35-ton rock trucks. They had a low ground pressure machine out there. That's about the only thing that would cover that, and they drove all over the site. They didn't have a haul road to use or anything to minimize compacting the whole site. And I think that's part of the reason that it became so impervious, and we got thousands of gallons of water off the site. And then the drainage features. Vegetated swales shall be installed to convey water to the detention basins. Can't be built. You can't vegetate them. And there were no vegetated swales. There were no swales built. And there still aren't. Another violation of the construction general permit. Sediment basins. Flow redirected by installed stormwater features are to be directed into a stormwater basin. The basin is to be used as a temporary sediment trap until final stabilization has occurred. Major failure by Navison. They did not do it. The outlet is to be blocked with hay bale or filter fabric with crushed stone. Wasn't done. Another major failure by Navison at the site. I don't know if Bates never got the word, if Bates never got the detail of how the basin was built. I don't know about that. And it says the proposed stormwater basin will act as a means to capture sediment during construction and have been sized to provide the required groundwater recharge volume in accordance with CGB Part 2.2.11. The bottoms of the sedimentation basin is to be 1 foot above the proposed bottom of the detention basin. I don't see that in the as-built plan that they sent over of the basin. Maybe they can point that to us later on. There's something here about getting rid of the sediment properly. They indicated they were gonna disturb more than 5 acres at a time in their application. And it says, temporary seeding shall be provided within 2 weeks of initial soil disturbance. All disturbed areas shall have a topsoil cover to allow for establishment of vegetation. Not possible to do it. They started the project at the wrong time of the year. And then again, they identify the sources of possible pollutants. They talk about how they're gonna store the materials. They don't have a trailer to store their hazardous materials. The morning we were there was a 5-gallon pail of hydraulic oil on the ground. There was another 5-gallon pail holding trash and an empty oil container and Red Bull cans. So they don't have a rubbish disposal.
I took a can of DEF fluid out of that trench that was in the center, but
Yeah,
it wasn't.
yeah. And then a car battery sitting on the ground, waiting to be tipped over. I took pictures of it, and when we were there, Mark Anderson had backed in for the site visit on Saturday, and where he was sitting, he was staring right at that stuff. But, nothing had done. I went to see the Bates foreman, who had switched over to 355, and informed him that happened, and I would say within an hour it was gone. But Navison is inspecting this job for themselves, and they're really not doing the job. My opinion based on my inspections. So then, spill prevention, I don't see any spill kits in the job, but I haven't asked. So I haven't gone there. Haven't seen any equipment being fueled there, haven't gone that, they're not gonna wash any vehicles there. Hazardous waste, battery, 5-gallon pail of hydraulic oil, sitting on the ground in the rain. Sanitary waste, portable toilets are there. They're not doing any concrete, so there's no washout on the ground, the fertilizer. And they just clearly say that no other pollution prevention practices will be used at the site other than the ones they've already described, but have pretty much ignored. And then inspection, maintenance, and corrective action, and this is why I took the test. I wanted to be sure of the timelines for corrective actions. I wanted to know the difference between maintenance and a corrective action. And I also wanted to ask for these reports in an amended order, but we can do that later on. And again, it talks about the 1/4 inch inspection within 24 hours. Mark Anderson indicated that Weston and Sampson comes out and does those with Joe, the SWIP inspector, Scott, with Joe Scott. So we'll find out. And if, in my book, if Weston and Sampson was really part of the SWIP team, Weston and Sampson knows that they would amend the SWIP and file an amendment and add themselves to the SWIP team. That's how it works. Anytime you make a change, you have and I can't tell you that at the moment, but you have a limited amount of time to make those changes and make an amendment form. And the amendment forms are supposed to be at the job, and all these things are supposed to be at the job. I have not asked for them at this location yet. I did ask for one at the next AMP job, and they didn't have anything. There is a rain gauge. Fortunately, it's at the EMA management office. We can all go line, it's on Weather Underground, and you can look at a report of every 1/4 inch rainstorm that we've had since this SWIP was filed. And that's what I'm gonna base, judging whether or not the inspections were done and we will get the inspection reports. Corrective action log. There's been a lot of corrective actions out there. For me, digging the trench, putting down the extra straw wattles, putting in the hydro mulch with the straw. Those weren't maintenance items, those were corrective actions. And when you do when you identify a corrective action, you're supposed to fix it in the same day or by the next day at the latest. And there were major delays in doing this. And then turbidity. So the water that came out of their project was as turbid can be. And it was very, very high levels of suspended solids. And when we went to the site visit at 582 Main Street first, the pond has cleared up. It's not that deep. And you could look in and you could see a fresh layer of silt on top of the fall leaves that fell into their pond. There's quite a bit of silt sitting in their pond. We are receiving nonstop phone calls from Mrs. Medeiros, who is the abutter on the other side of Rochelle's, that her pond is still brown and that she had fish and she thinks it killed her fish. We talked about testing her pond also for E. coli, but there's no sense in doing that. She's on town water. But it has been silted, and I don't know what we can do about that. It's that's out of our hands. So they didn't plan on doing any dewatering, and when these basins filled up, and Rob might take this into consideration, maybe you want to dewater some of this and put it through a filter sock, and put it out as clean water than trying to hold back more than a 3-inch rainstorm if we get a big rainstorm. I know you say here that you're not going to do any dewatering, but that might become necessary. So, and then when I saw this, I was surprised to see that actually Pat Meehan, the manager of Bates, had signed it. So forewarned is fair warned. I had been told by the Bates job super there that when I showed up with this, it was the first time he had seen it. And that's when he commented to me that he hadn't seen the detail for the basin when he built it, and that he was just trying to stop stormwater and he built it out of mud, quote unquote. So when I saw the detail, and I saw the state spec gravel and stone gradations and compaction testing, I said to myself, there's no way in hell that they followed all of these requirements building this basin. And I remember, and there's too many Joes in this job, but Bates' project manager's name is Joe as well. I don't know his last name. He's been around a long time. He knows what he's doing, and he told me that he felt that the basin wasn't right, so he improvised. And that they agreed with him, and they let him make his adjustments. None of that got approved by anybody. None of that was submitted anywhere. It wasn't peer reviewed or vetted. It was a change in the field, but that's a major change in the field. So after I found out when they made the basin bigger, and then I got the comment that they used mud, I sent an email to Navison asking if there had been any construction period inspections, and they wrote back and said, yes, there were inspections. They didn't send them, but they wrote back for inspections. And my next question after they said they did inspections was I was going to ask for progress photos showing that those things were actually done. If you went and inspected something and verified, you would take a progress photo and write a report in normal work. After I mentioned in an email that I was concerned about the integrity of the basin, I got a call from Joe, no last name, from Bates, saying, did you say something? Because we're down here digging the back of the basin out, we're putting stone in it, we're doing all these things. To me, that's an admission that it wasn't built the way it was supposed to be built, and they knew it. And then the comment was, we did the compaction test, but the compaction test was supposed to be built as this was built. And the compaction test I'm familiar with is a Troxler, a nuclear density machine. And by their own specifications, they need to achieve 95% compaction or better. And the comment from the field from Bates was, we did the compaction test, but this is all after this is built. And they made their modifications after my comment that they didn't come out as bad as I thought. But that wasn't saying we got 95% or 97% or whatever. It wasn't as bad as we thought. Haven't seen any compaction tests from Navison. Just, we did. So then when I got into the actual plans that were attached to the SWIP, I see some notes here. Let me just do that. There are notes right here. So, test pit 1, SHGW spring high groundwater, 107.6. That's where groundwater was encountered. There's only 111 is the elevation of that piece of land. In the next plan that I'll show you, there are notes in here that says, existing grades to be maintained. So in other words, when they were done clearing the site and grubbing and taking the trees out, it still needed to be 111 at that 111. There's no way in hell that you could take out 19 acres of forest, disturb all that earth. There's a ton of earth connected to tree trunks and those things. I don't know if you've ever seen one come out of the ground. And they scraped off the loam and subsoil. So now we're within, and Joe and I talked about it in the Board of Health, and we estimated that taking the trees out took away a foot. And the comment from Joe, the super for Bates, is he's never seen so much loom in his life. There was an incredible amount of loom on the site. So now we're down into groundwater. We're very close to it, and we're exceeding the 4-foot limit there. If you go to the next one. So right here, typical sequence of construction, and I can't make it any bigger without making it blurry. So prior to the development of the site, erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be installed as shown on the plans. Site development scheduling shall take into consideration the growing season, such that bulk earthwork is not initiated during a period when vegetative stabilization cannot be achieved within 14 days of completing the earthwork in a given area. I didn't make this up, they wrote it, it's in their plans, they ignored it. And that's again, why this happened. I did inspect the erosion controls. I actually know the company that does it, I use them myself, it's called S&M Farms, and they do an incredible job. So, sediment barriers shall be installed around stockpile areas and along all disturbed slopes as needed. There were no erosion control barriers around the stockpiles until very recently. And the commission, remember, this has been something I've been driving home at Keating, is they don't have erosion controls around their stuff. And this is stuff that's required by EPA. This isn't required by us. It's by EPA. So I pointed out to Mark Anderson at the job that there was a new straw wattle around a loom pile. And it hadn't been there for any of my previous inspections, and I said, when did you put this in? And it looked brand new and shiny, it wasn't even dirty. And he said, oh, that went in on December 28th. And that was just not true. I've been there every day, and I take progress photos every day. It was installed the Thursday before New Year's. And I went and saw Joe, the super from the site, and said, when did that Barry got installed? I did it last Thursday. I said, okay, I was there on Friday and I saw it. But Navson wants to tell us it was done weeks before that. Not true. But what they did is they went out and they took a hard look at everything they were missing and tried to put a Band-Aid on it after the fact and tell us they've already done it. I'm not good with that. Stockpiled topsoil shall be seeded and mulched when it is to be stored more than 30 days. Loom piles have been on site for more than 30 days. They haven't done anything to take care of that. And then temporary diversion swales with hay bale check dams is needed. There's not a check dam on the site. It says hay bales, it should be straw bales, but big deal. So all these little things are missing that control stormwater. And I recently looked at a submittal from Nexamp at Robinson Road. And they installed 12-inch silt socks, which weigh like 50 pounds a foot or 40 pounds a square foot. And they actually showed a detail of their construction period where they will run silt socks diagonally across the whole site to filter water and to slow water down and not have this problem. Pretty easy design, but that didn't happen here. There were no contingencies or any of those things. And it's not hindsight. Nexamp doesn't know what happened at 550 Main. It was just a better design. Then again, it talks about the inspections at 1/4 of an inch. And then under the general SWIP notes, all disturbed areas shall be kept to a minimum. There was no minimum. It was just blown out to the 19 acres. Grading and restoration shall be accomplished as soon as practical. It can't be accomplished until the growing season, other than the hydro mulch. I got that information. And then some confusion for me here, and I think that it needs to get cleared up, especially for the west gates. It says here that the property owner is, Harold and Carol Westgate, and that the contractor is responsible for the inspection and maintenance of all stormwater management facilities, including stabilization and site control until such time as the project is accepted by the owner. And thereafter, the owner shall be responsible for the inspection and maintenance of any stormwater facilities. Is that intended to mean Navison or the owner of the property? Because I have a problem with the owner of the property being tasked with, managing all of this. I don't think they have the ability to do it, and they certainly wouldn't be able to do any inspections because they're not certified by EPA. After February 13th or something, you can no longer just be a qualified environmental professional and do erosion control and inspections. You have to be an approved construction general permit inspector. You can either take the EPA test for free, or you can go take a class at a couple of approved companies. There it is. Construction detention basin. Following land clearing to serve as temporary sediment basin during construction. Massive failure. You see the pipes. 1, 2, 3. 8-inch wide open. Everything just blew right out the gate. And then if we go, come on iPad. It'll be on the next one. So here it describes what's in the basin. So 2 12-inch high-density polyethylene pipes never got plugged. An 8-inch pipe never got plugged, and just let that water go right out without no treatment. The proposed detention basin, the top of the berm is elevation 109. The bottom of the basin elevation is 105. But spring high groundwater is 103.2. So that basin's been excavated into groundwater. Another violation of our groundwater protection bylaw. And then here we are. Retain existing grades, 300 array footprint. Areas beneath array shall be seeded with clover seed mixes specified. Now, when the first off-site release happened, I asked for an existing conditions topo of the site. I want to know what the topographical conditions were of the site and had they actually reduced it. Because this is what happened at Wing Lane. They weren't going to clear the site and the whole site got cleared. So it says right here that the contractor is going to establish existing grades, and I don't even think that that's possible. And it's in here as window dressing to make you think it's not going to affect stormwater. I don't know what, but it's all through the plans about maintaining existing elevations. So I don't know if they expected the contractor to actually go back and grade it and put soil in and bring it back to its original grades after they did their site work. And I don't know if we'll know. So here's where they talk about the berm, and it says the composition of the berm shall contain a well-graded mixture of particles, sizes, and may contain rocks less than 4 inches in diameter. Erosion control mix must be free of refuse, physical contaminants, and material toxic to plant growth. And to cut to the chase on number 2, erosion control mixed berm shall be installed along slopes within the limit of work as needed for intermediate slope protection while performing grubbing and grading. None of this stuff was stabilized until the violation and the enforcement order came out. Here's a picture of the erosion control blankets. So it's not like they didn't anticipate using them. They've been spec'd. they just ignored it. And I don't know if it was up to Bates to buy it and install it, but it got missed in the inspections by Navason's team. Here is the detail of the road. And this shows a gravel burrow base, and then a 6-inch crushed stone mascot bed. Don't know if that was really constructed. It doesn't seem like there's that kind of material on the road. It seems like they took dense grade and just blew it over the road and said that's it. So I'd be looking for the inspection reports on those at some point. I'm suspicious on all of these things that were supposed to be done just to get the project going. They show the erosion control blanket on the berm. There was one there when we went Saturday, but it's fairly new. And we have pictures from before that it wasn't there. They talk about the compacted dense grade crushed stone. Was it really compacted? You know, can we get the compaction test? Or is it what the project manager said, I just built it in a hurry, I had to do something. You know, I made the improvements I needed to make. And he actually told me that this was the first time that he saw this design. A disclaimer, so these plans were drafted by Field Engineering for Clean Energy Collective. Navason inherited these designs and specs. And Weston and Sampson, you know, puts in here, Weston and Sampson has not verified design calculations of field engineering. So we're showing it to you, but we're not certifying it. And that's a normal thing, but they didn't have any faith in field engineering. Here's the grass line swales that don't exist. Never got built. And then we get to the SWIP, and I'm not gonna, there's only 2 more pages, I think. Yeah. I know everyone likes to get out of here. And this all talks about complying with the construction general permit. Actually, this is the general permit. I'm sorry, we already went through this with you. And there are 150-something pages of the construction general permit. And when you take the exam points out some of the compliance issues, but says, refer to the construction general permit for all of the information. And they tell you to have the construction general permit open while you take the exam, so that you can stop and look at the other requirements. And I really think this is just based so that when there is a violation or something goes wrong, EPA can come back and say, you knew better. You took the test, you got certified. You know what you're supposed to be doing. And I don't know how much more you want. I could show you where the construction general permit requires all of these things, but the bottom line is that based on the Wetlands Protection Act, untreated stormwater from their project reached an off-site jurisdictional area, and now their site is jurisdictional to our commission. And that's why I want a notice of intent.
So, not a hearing, I don't have to take comments, but I do actually have a couple of questions. I don't know who Mark Anderson is. Is Mark Anderson here? Would you be willing to step up to the podium so I can ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
So, curious about your initial decline to file an after-the-fact notice of intent. What was the basis for that comment, for that decision?
We are I don't know if you want
Project team can answer it.
Yeah.
Just real quick. Mark is a field guy.
Can you get up to the podium?
Sure, just for the
Identify
record,
yourself.
identify it.
Yeah.
Because we've only met once.
Thank you. Steve Campbell, Chief Operations Officer at Navison. So the reason that response was given was it's our understanding, and based on DEP guidelines on enforcement orders, that retroactively filing a notice of intent is not DEP's guidelines. DEP wants it settled under an enforcement order. So we are willing to work with an enforcement settlement, but we are not going to go back and refile an NOI. We've, as Pat said yesterday, we admitted at the Board of Health, we did screw up here, and we're doing everything in our power to try to fix that. There are factual inaccuracies throughout Mr. Hannon's speech there that we can go through individually. He's been given 3 copies of this plan. That CPG that's up on as a draft, he was given 3 copies that both Mark and Rob were at before we started construction. He approved those. He requested, he asked that. He's asked for an as-built. The as-built was given and admitted to be given here before the December 14th hearing when we were here before you the first time.
Only of the basin.
Let me
Only
speak,
of the
please.
basin.
Some of the representations of what's been said to Joe Scott, what's been said back to Mr. Hannon are factually inaccurate. So what we're here tonight to say, yes, we discharged offsite. The first one we thought we had controlled. It escalated above and beyond that night. And since that night, we have been doing everything in our power to try to keep everything on site. However, we're under 3 distinct cease and desist orders now. Because one at the planning board, one at the Board of Health, and one at this commission. So we've been trying to retroactively make sure that what we thought was the most important part of all of those was until we had a meeting, which I've been requesting multiple times with this town to try to get everybody on the same page. I've sent emails across the board where everybody's been included. Mr. Roca, I appreciate you getting back to me that you received those. So this board has seen those. We have been upfront in saying we want to deal with this. We want to try to fix it. And up until the point where, let me back up, we don't think we've done anything wrong with the permits. There's some questions under the planning board. We're going to deal with the building inspector. We're going to talk about that. We were dealing last night with the Board of Health. After that second storm, we've done everything we said we were going to do. We helped the abutters with their water. We had water on their porch 2 days after that second storm. By the following Thursday before that, we had their water line reconstructed. There was things that were done. The representations that we're not taking this seriously, that we're not just willy-nilly doing this. We've submitted requests for meetings. We've submitted requests for updated plans so we could all get on the same page and try to figure out how to do this. Nothing has come back. So the reason we haven't done anything between then and now was because there was nothing back from the town other than kept issuing cease and desist orders. And then we had our first meeting last night at Board of Health. And at the Board of Health, last night was constructive. We had a discussion. We represented what was going on. We tried to say, we've done what we said you needed us to do under the Board of Health order. Please release the order. There were a couple of questions that came up. We're now going to check in their septic system, make sure that the septic system is okay, because there were some representations that were given to us last night that people were concerned about the septic system. We're going to do a Title V inspection. So that got continued for another 2 weeks. The reason we didn't want to bring up last night is each individual board has their own jurisdiction here. And so we're trying to, while it's a whole town thing and we understand that, each individual board has jurisdiction, they have what they can control, and we're getting afraid that everything's kind of crossing the lines. And so back to the original question, why are we not filing an NOI? Because under DEP guidelines, it says keep it as under enforcement. We still don't believe that this board has jurisdiction. However, we would like to work with the town and work with what we need to do to get this project back moving. It is not illegal to discharge stormwater off of a site. It is, and we've fixed what we did on that first, and Pat's smiling, but we have done a lot on this. The whole site is now stable. We're tweaking it, but we can't do too much more because of the cease and desist. So we're trying to fix and not have stormwater with both hands tied behind our back. So, Mr. Chairman, to your original question, that's why we're here tonight. We're here tonight to try to figure out how to get past this. And Mr. Kalpin, our attorney, if you let him, would talk, but we have a lot of money invested in this deal, and we don't need it to go sideways longer than it has to. And we're willing to work with this board, work with a design. At the first COMCOM hearing on 14th, Pat said he wanted to hire an outside consultant to help through this. Yes, I've been waiting since then to talk to anybody. No one will talk to us. It's all pointing, you guys are doing bad, you're doing bad. And so we're trying to retroactively and react, but we want to get involved in it. And we're not amending a permit. We're trying to deal with a construction phase project where we think the special permit is still valid. And we're going to fight that fight with the building inspector and the planning board. But, so, I hope that answers your question.
So, I would say that, A, Mr. Campbell has an unrealistic expectation that he can contact the town at 4:07 in the afternoon and expect them to set up a meeting in the next couple of days. As you know, from a recap that I sent to this commission privately, we were so busy trying to get water connected to 582 Main Street because Navison wrote the very long letter. It's not our fault, Pat Hannon's fault, he's not responsive, he's not answering my emails. When I get an email at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm working for the Board of Health at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I worked since December 8th until New Year's every day unless you got emails from me the day after Christmas, the day before Christmas, nighttime, morning, everything. The town's main goal was to get the Walshes hooked up to town water before Christmas. It was unfair that Navison was being unresponsive to that in the beginning. And it was only multiple enforcement orders that they pissed the town off so bad that everybody was gonna look at all of the approvals and go through all of these things, that Navison finally came to the table in the 11th hour and delivered 50 gallons of water to their house and dumped a cooler on their front porch. I got an email from Mr. Campbell saying he called me and I didn't respond for me to make arrangements to have water delivered to the Campbell's house. I'm not his errand boy. They caused the problem. They should have knocked on the door. They should have introduced themselves. They should have apologized to the Walshes, and that's never happened. They stuck a card in the door and said, "Call me if you need anything."
The really bad
They-
part of this, I didn't interrupt, but they didn't have water until 2 PM on Christmas Eve day.
Correct.
That's horrific with
Correct.
3 kids.
Correct. And we got an email. This is how disconnected Navison has been.
22nd.
It was the 22nd.
So the 22nd, we got an,
Because they weren't there.
but we were closing. The town was closing on the 23rd at noontime.
So we're gonna unpack.
And I'm getting emails
So-
on a holiday that we have as a town, and he's saying we're not being responsive. Oh, we're not working. I'm not gonna be responsive. But to the Walshes, they went without water. And nobody saw the immediacy, and I have to tell you, I was shocked. I was sitting in the DPW building office, next door to my office, and said, this is what's going on at 582 Main Street. I talked to Navison's engineer, Mark Anderson. It appeared they were gonna jump into this and bite off the water installation. And I said, I need a commitment by 4 o'clock today. It was Friday. And I'll get back to you. And then Joanne calls me and tells me that Mark Anderson was into the Conservation Commission looking for the well results because they want to dispute it and they really don't want to do it. So I went and saw Dan, and Dan goes, I'll do it. We can do it tomorrow. The DPW will do it tomorrow. And when a municipality can move faster than a public company, that's a disgrace. Okay? And we're lucky that we have a DPW that our director is willing to go out and hop in a machine and cut the street open 3 days before Christmas and get their water to the line. And we got an email from Navison saying, here's pictures, our crew is out there now installing the water line. It was the DPW they took pictures of. That's how disconnected they are. And it took us a week to have internal meetings, 2 internal meetings, 2.5 hours each, meetings with town council, meetings with the town administrator. That's why they weren't getting any responses to, we have an emergency and we need you to make it an emergency for you and give us approvals. Doesn't make it our emergency. They screwed up the job. Put on your big boy pants and fix it. $7,000 would have taken care of the problem for the Walshes. They didn't want to spend $7,000. But now that planning board's on them, the Board of Health is on them, and the Conservation Commission is on them, now they want to play ball. Now we did it. The 2-page, we didn't do it, Pat Hand is wrong. That's BS. They did it, they're responsible for it. And the enforcement manual does not say you can't have a notice of intent. They recommend that you do a restoration order so that someone can't file a notice of intent that can't be approved and continue their violation along and keep presenting information to the commission that you don't accept. That's not what's happening here. We want a notice of intent, we're entitled to it, and I'm gonna ask you to ratify the order. If they don't like what we do, they can appeal it to DEP. And if DEP told them it's the wrong thing, then DEP will reverse our order. And I have no problem with being wrong. I like to be right, but I have no problem with being wrong. And there's no harm, no foul in approving this enforcement order tonight and letting them seek their own remedies. And I would object to you hearing from an attorney without us having the benefit of an attorney here tonight. I brought it up last night at the commission. This attorney knows we're represented by counsel and has a responsibility to call town council and say, I'm gonna be at the meeting, can you make it? And council can say, I can't be there, but go ahead, or let me check with the chairman and see what they wanna do. When the planning board met with them, he was not allowed to talk.
So I'll do the same then. I would like our counsel to be here if you're ready.
Sir, if I may, and I apologize, that statement is incorrect. I gave a very lengthy presentation
This is the same crap
last night at the planning board. It was not a public hearing.
That wasn't the planning board, that was the Board of Health, sir.
I said
that was
at
the Board of
at the planning board, I did not give a presentation.
And you were told
because
you
it was
couldn't.
not a public hearing.
You were told you
Tonight,
couldn't.
we requested for a hearing
This is not a hearing.
well, we requested one on that. So
We can put
last
it
night,
on an upcoming agenda, but it's
yeah,
not on
so
tonight's hearing.
we just, I think if you can hear me, I don't want to be argumentative. First off, on behalf of Navison, we would like to apologize. We would like to take responsibility for this.
He
Quite
doesn't
frankly,
want to
we're
listen to what
sorry.
you told him.
Great.
Assuming you're the
What?
abutters, we are sorry, and we're trying to fix it.
Again, you're an attorney speaking for them, we don't have our town's attorney here. My preference is that your presentation waits until it's a hearing and that there's an attorney
Yes, but
here.
you need to
I would,
understand.
if Mr. Campbell, who's
Okay.
not an attorney, would like to say something similar, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Just so you know, what was said about the legal requirements is false because your attorney hasn't contacted me. That's the way the law works. And Steve-
I understand the rules of professional conduct for an attorney in Massachusetts, but I think you do have a responsibility to contact town council.
An attorney
when
for
you're gonna be
30
here.
years, sir, and you're incorrect.
That's all right. I read it on
Just
Facebook.
read that.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows,
I have to go to the bathroom, but
Yeah,
one of them, I'm
right.
great.
It's being recorded, right?
Section D of your enforcement order. Enforcement order issued by the Conservation Commission cannot be appealed to the Department of Environmental Protection, only can be appealed in Superior Court. So, if the order is enforced tonight with the notice as such, we're not going to DEP. And we're trying to work with you, trying to work with the town. But if the town's not willing to work with us, we're gonna have to protect our rights, and there might be other stuff, and this might go to a different level. So,
Mr. Chairman, before I go, spoke to town council about this specifically. Because we do not have a wetlands bylaw, it's not appealable to Superior Court, it's appealable to DEP only. You can shake your head, that's advice from town council for us, please take their advice.
Mr. Chair, that's what it says in the enforcement order. It's right here.
Just telling
So,
you what our town council told us.
that's,
I'm
we
not
don't want
trying
to,
be
we don't want to go there.
argumentative,
We have a
sir.
lot of money invested in this deal. This is over $10 million of our money for this deal to get done. We're willing to work with the town. We want to work with the town. The portrayal that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing and the portrayal that we're not taking this seriously is factually inaccurate. And I think we're here tonight, we were at Board of Health last night, and we're dealing with the planning board to make sure that we're doing the right thing. yes, the first storm happened, and we were questioning whether or not we were responsible. We were trying to figure it out. We thought we had it figured out, and the second storm it overcame. From that moment on, that email came out outlining everything. And yes, I did go after Mr. Hannon a little bit in that, because I wanted people to know that we wanted to set the record straight, that we're not just doing this. I started sending pictures so we could say, people could see that we were doing things. And we hadn't had contacts with the abutters. Mr. Hannon was the only one who had said that what was going on. We were reaching out because we had no way of finding out from them how to get in touch with them. And so we were trying to go through the town to do that. We weren't putting the responsibility on the town. We were asking for help to remedy the situation. Yes, DPW jumped up and got it over there. From when it got to the side, our guys had it installed in 2 days. 2 days, the next day. So there was a little bit of a gap in there, and I understand it was all around the holidays, and it was a lot of moving parts and a lot of things flying around. And we'll admit that we had those 2 issues. And since that 2 issues, we've been trying to fix it. But at the same time, I said it earlier, we've had both hands tied behind our back with all of these cease and desists. Everyone's coming at us that you can't do anything, you can't touch it or anything. Now under the board, under the building inspector's cease and desist, we can't do any work at all without written consent of the building inspector. So now what we've been out there trying to do is make sure that as storms come, we're making sure that things are going. We're making sure that there's capacity in the basins. We're making sure that what this order said, that we're not discharging another drop of stormwater off the site until we get a better sense of what's going on. That's what we're doing. We're taking that seriously. Building inspector just took that away from us because now we have to go through written approval before we do anything else. So I'm here pleading tonight to just say, we're trying to fix this. We really are trying to fix this. And there's the legal ramifications that if things happen, we're going to maintain our rights and we're going to maintain how we need to do things to protect our investment. And we don't want to go there, but if certain things continue to happen the way they're going, they may go there. So that's all I want to say.
Well, I have you at the podium. So we as a commission here, we've seen what's happened over the last, we'll call it 2 months. The project starting after October 31st, 19 acres of trees being cleared.
Yep.
Then all kinds of problems with runoff, and I know you jumped in lately to stop the runoff and, you know, with the help of the town, get the Walsh's town water. But clearly you've got 3 boards that are wanting, on paper,
Mhm.
guarantees from Navison.
Yeah.
That stuff is gonna get done the way it's supposed to get done, and it was originally depicted in plans.
Correct.
So after seeing these mistakes happen, we now wanna know, well, how is that not gonna happen again? So what written guarantees are there?
We can work on an enforcement settlement, the way to do this, right? Huh? The building inspector has control over permitting, planning. Stormwater has control. You guys have jurisdiction over us on stormwater, which has been submitted. And just one other thing I gotta get out there. Every inspection we've ever done is sitting in the trailer out on site. Every inspection. We're doing everything. Weston and Sampson can get up here a little bit and talk about this. So, Pat, you didn't ask? All of the inspections were
You
on
could show it to us. You
site.
could show it to us after you file the notice of intent,
So-
because I'm asking the commission to do what our lawyer suggests and ratify the order.
But continue, so you said inspections are in the trailer,
Yeah.
anything else?
Your point of how do you guarantee, we can come to a settlement that doesn't need a notice of intent filed. We can come to an enforcement settlement that says all of that and gives you placing that Pat can come in and do his inspections continually. We have all the stuff. We can make sure that ultimately this is gonna come down to the building inspector, that we build the plan that was approved under the special permit. We believe we're still there. On the tree clearing, nowhere in the conditions does it say, don't cut trees after November 1. What it says is, you can't hydroseed after November 1, and there's then a link that people make, well, if you can't hydroseed, you can't cut. No, the intent there is you can cut as long as you can stabilize. And again, on this project, was there a gap there? Yes, and we'll admit that, and we'll rectify that, and it'll go better. But you can use other methods, and all that CPG stuff, there are other methods of maintaining and stabilizing the soil. So yes, we are in disagreement that the building inspectors claim that we're in violation of a lot of these special permit items. It's just factually inaccurate too. So we're good. That's why we're making the rounds on all this. And I understand your point is everybody wants to be on the same page and get to the point where we're building what we said we were going to build, which we started to. And then everything that's happened since then is us trying to make sure that no stormwater is leaving the site. We're happy to talk to a third-party city-owned consultant who will review all this stuff and make sure that it's fine. But last night, Board of Health said, well, you can't do that unless you make a filing. We're not making a filing because we're not amending any permits. All the stuff that we're doing now is construction phase, maintenance, corrective action that we can do under the special permit, under our own general construction permit with EPA.
Yeah, it was mentioned earlier regarding maybe, an outside engineering firm reviewing plans. Where is that right now?
They would have to submit plans along with calculations of how that makes it better, just like a stormwater submittal. And then it has to be an estimate for that
So
work.
are these plans different than that is already filed with the town?
Well, they've built I'm glad you mentioned the plans, because this was the plan they sent over when we were having all our internal meetings, and they wanted to do this emergency work. And, hold that side of me. Thank you. They added a second basin over here. And the original plans for this job had 2 basins, but somehow it morphed into 1 basin by the time Navison took this over. When we were standing here Saturday, I mentioned to Mark Anderson, their project manager, that there was an area that the stumps were not to be removed when the trees were cut. That's where it was. So they built this without an approval. They removed all the stumps that weren't supposed to be removed. So now you've got a whole new area of earth disturbance there. This thing is an abomination of not following what's supposed to be done. And I will bet you, I will just assure you that the DEP enforcement manual allows for I don't know what their fear of notice of intent is. I don't know what that fear is, but it allows to require a notice of intent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have written that regulation. So please take the advice of the de-escalated town council, ratify the enforcement order. The worst that can happen is somebody reverses it.
And for the record, even if you know the exact words, what's in the enforcement order? What does the enforcement order say?
File a notice of intent and a corrective action designed to prevent stormwater explosions. Obviously, there's something wrong with their design. It doesn't work. I asked, so when I took the test,
I'll come back to you.
When I took the test for EPA, it mentions a construction period stormwater pollution prevention plan. And I don't know if I asked Rob, did I call you and ask you if you had heard of a construction period stormwater prevention plan?
I don't remember you calling them.
Okay, so I might have called Beals and Thomas, and they had not heard of it. But EPA recommends it, that when you get into these projects, that there's a pre-construction and a post-construction stormwater plan. But there's only the text in the plan that deals with times of year and sequences and those things. But if you're gonna clear 19 acres in December when you can't do things, then you should develop a construction period stormwater pollution prevention plan. And that's one of the things that we could require under the notice of intent.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something?
I'll go back to you.
The statement that our plan doesn't work, I think is, again, not a nice representation. The plan that was approved was a continued, fully done site, fully stabilized site. What we're having trouble right now is construction phase services. We're having a problem managing stormwater. That's what caused the issue. Weston and Sampson, and they can get up here and say this, has verified since the original IFC plan that Pat showed, that Field's original design calcs work. But yes, as designed, the way it is, the way we're disturbing, once it's stabilized, it will work. This is not, in our mind, it's not a question of that plan being inaccurate and wrong. The design is not wrong. What's happening right now is how we're dealing with construction, how we're dealing with the site during construction. And then the point on an area where the stumps were removed, part of this enforcement order, don't do anything unless you're approved by the town. All right, here's the remediation plan. Are we good with this? That's what was stated in here.
And I can show you your email where I wrote back to you and said, I can't approve it. It has to go before the commission, and you failed. No, hold on.
No.
You failed to understand that it takes 2 weeks for this commission to meet. So you're looking for instant gratification that can't be given.
No, and what I'm saying is, we asked for approval. Everybody knew that there was a major storm coming the second week. There was another 1.5 inches coming. And we were trying to get ready to make sure that this wasn't going to discharge any stormwater. And in the order, it said, give us approval. I have an email back from Mr. Hannon that says, I'm reviewing it tomorrow. I'll let you know at 1 o'clock. We got to the point where it was past that, and we had to move. So that's why we cleared those stumps.
now
There are
you're-
other areas that we can show on property that are stumps that were supposed to be cleared inside of our fence line that have not been removed. So I understand that area was there. That area ended up being disturbed because we were trying to conform with the order and keeping construction phase stormwater on site.
Curious if anybody else up at the commission has any questions or comments? I think we need to move on this.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, actually, I don't know if the Walshes have any questions or comments first.
Uh,
And if so, we need you, for the record to come up with. Yeah, it's not a hearing, but I'm gonna give you a chance to.
I don't have any problems on what happens on the other side of the fence. I'm that guy. I don't have a problem with you guys. I don't. Once it impacted me, that's why all this happened. I just wanted to say to the town, as far as Bob Hinckley, Pat Hannon, Joe Carrera, I applaud every one of you. Thank you for stepping up. I just wish that you guys, gave me 100 gallons of water once I was impacted. And that's just a bad call. That's all I gotta say.
Don't worry, take care of yourself.
So as much as I hate to do this, we're at the point where it looks like the lawyers are gonna be fighting this out. It just drives me nuts. But, I'm not an attorney, and if our town council was recommending that we do this, I'm gonna suggest that we do this. And it'll be in your hands, it'll be in Jeff Blake's hands, and maybe it'll get resolved quickly, and it'll get out of lawyers' hands and back to construction team.
May I ask one question, please, sir? This is the first that I've heard your town council's name. Is it all right with you if I contact your town council? Because
It seems
without
like-
having that
seems like a
permission,
prudent move.
I'm not allowed to do that, so I just want to make sure.
It seems like the wise thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, I appreciate
So
it.
Evelyn, you sound like you were gonna make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to ratify the enforcement order.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second it just so we can vote.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Those in favor?
I'm saying that.
Okay, there's 2 ayes. Those abstaining? Huh? Okay, that's 3 ayes. Abstaining or ayes? 1 decline.
I'm gonna abstain on this one.
Okay. All right.
Can you give a reason?
I would like our town council here I'd like to talk this out before, there's a lot of he said, hearsay.
Well, if you want to spend another hour, I can read every email that went back and forth between Mr. and Campbell, and I can
No,
show
let's not
you.
do that.
Well,
But,
I've been working on this since December 8th until today. Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, everything included.
so let's, all right, so, we'll take our vote. Have our vote. So that's 4 approved, one abstention. And clearly this is gonna be on the next agenda.
Well, that, yes.
Well,
Actually, we'll end up having an executive session with town council.
Okay, right.
If they're threatening litigation, then we need to have an executive session.
That's required.
I would rather we as boards all work it out, but I'm not an attorney, and if it's risen to the level of town council, advising us.
And we appreciate
There's been a
that.
vote.
All we're trying to
I need
do
to hand it
is
off.
to work it out. This is the first we've heard that you're represented by town council.
You heard it last night.
And I didn't have a chance to respond to you, you didn't give me the name.
No, you told me I was wrong.
The obligation is on Mr. Blake to contact me since I've been
Sure that-
CC'd on
sure
all of
that-
those emails.
Did you give
the whole
anybody your
time.
card? Because I asked this morning for your name, so I could try and let that Blake know you were here, but
Excuse me,
We didn't get-
excuse me,
yeah.
I'm talking to the
Let's let him
chair.
finish. I'm talking to you.
Please, I'll respond to you afterwards.
great.
Um, We're
One
trying
second. Has
to,
it
we're
been a
trying
vote?
to work this
But
out.
has there been a vote?
Yes, and
Okay,
it's been
so,
affordable.
and the vote carried?
And-
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And all I'm saying is, now that the vote's carried, your order is clear.
Mhm.
It gets appealed to Superior Court. That's where we're gonna end up, unfortunately. We'd still like to be able to work it out with your town council, but we will be under time pressures to be able to do that.
And I hope
Because
it
there will be
happen-
time,
Hope
yes.
it happens with town council sooner than
I've just,
Superior Court.
as soon as I got his name, I've emailed him already,
Okay.
asking him to contact me immediately.
All right. So, come to this, let's hope we get to the resolution sooner than later. But thank you for all coming in, I appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, response from peer review rates. So we received a couple here, and
You did, you have them?
yeah, printed.
Okay, I got it here.
So they're similar, BGF's tiny bit more. So Joanne, thanks for reaching out to ask for those. Good to have those. I don't know if we need to talk any more about that, other than, I think it comes up next, establishing a peer,
My recommendation is that we establish a list of 3. Because one peer review may be better for certain projects. And I think that I have a lot of faith in GAF, having dealt with him as a commission and how responsive he is and all of these things, to maybe, and I know we talked about a rotation, but if there's, bigger projects and we need more access versus a person from Wilmington and somebody local.
Excuse me a moment.
I left the light on. That we put the 3 of them on. We're in a situation now where Beals and Thomas is the engineer of record for Nexamp on solar fields.
right.
And just so the commission knows, every single project in town is now shut down. There's a town-wide issue here that the planning board records don't match the conservation records and planning board records don't match the building department records. The plans that were approved in the building department aren't signed by the planning board, some of the bonds aren't signed by the applicants. It's a mess. So we had another meeting today for 2 hours internally, and it's been decided that there will be no more building permits issued on any of these projects until there are sign-offs from everybody. And this is all falling on Andy Babola, the new commissioner of inspectional services, that he's gonna be the gatekeeper of making sure that, things don't just slip by and approval doesn't happen and go. I have a suggestion for the commission. It's a shame that this project didn't go through conservation. It really is. And I think that, I get a lot of sign-off sheets, not a lot, but maybe 1 or 2 a week, from the Board of Health or somebody else to sign off on septic systems and porch additions and all these things without going through conservation. We meet every 2 weeks. I would like to have those come before the commission and have the commission look at them. You look at them on your map, we can connect to the TV here, and you decide whether you want me to sign off on them or not, or if you want to have them in for an IDA. Because the sign off is whether or not you need to come in front of the commission. And what happened with Navison is our agent signed off on without it coming to the commission, and I truly believe that she was misled in the presentation from the engineer who sold her on it. And that's one way to stop it, because everybody's a little bit moldable, and they don't want to say no to their friend from the Lions Club or whatever, and this is what's coming of it. The mess is finally really hitting, and it's time to turn it around. And having a building commissioner who's now not afraid to write a cease and desist order and aggravate somebody who's someone's friend is gonna change the tide on that. I've also recommended in the meeting today that either the planning board or we start requiring a performance bond for site work. So if something goes wrong on the site work, we've got a kitty to go fix it ourselves when they don't wanna do it. And any job I've ever been on, I had a performance bond for the site work. I had a performance bond for, whatever function was going on. We only have performance bonds in the town for solar fields for decommissioning 30 years from now. We have no pot of gold to rectify things, even though we have the right to enter the property and build them later. If you've got their money tied up, they're a lot more cooperative.
Go back to your first point, though. I still think that if things come to you and they're clear cut, sign off. I mean,
We already approved that.
yeah,
That's-
we've empowered you to do that.
But that's me,
I still,
and I'm 68 years old. And you're gonna wind up with another agent, at some point. And it just became painfully obvious these last 2 weeks that you aren't informed, the board, the commission's not informed of things that go on in the office. And to me, to sign off on a tree removal or go inspect a COC and not have an inspection, a site visit, seems normal. But what's turning out is things got approved because of relationships and other things in town. And I got a call from Selectman Gaspar today saying, we're on the right track. We finally have, this stuff starting. And I want you to make a point to your commission that it's ending. And that we really need to tighten this up until we get into sync. We're trying to figure out right now how we get a plans approved by the planning board, and then the Conservation Commission gets the same set of plans. So it's almost going back to the planning board has to approve the project first, and then it goes before Conservation. The simultaneous approvals aren't working out. There's a definite problem there. So,
yeah, it's frustrating that 3 boards are ending up sometimes with 3 different plans.
every job, even Nexamp, every job has different plans. Nexamp's plans were modified as late as December 16th of 2022. And they don't identify the modifications. So part of the meeting today was you have to call out the modifications. It's like changing someone's document but not redlining it and saying hunt for it.
Okay. All right, so, yeah.
Can we get back to the peer review?
Yeah, but, so we've got GAF, so if Beals and Thomas is the engineers of record for these projects, that, obviously they're going to stay with those.
Yeah.
But they're adding in PCG and GAF, so we've got a rotation.
We've got some choices.
Yeah, but you were gonna.
Well, yeah, back to what you were saying, should we just have a joint meeting with planning on projects like this that are gonna require, changes and?
You can make them joint meetings, but their meetings are long because of subdivision control and all of that stuff.
And ours aren't.
Well,
No, they're not. This was a,
Generally not.
this is,
Evelyn, I've been to New Bedford meetings in 3.5, 4 hours.
At least
Every
cap them at 3.
time.
when I was in Uxbridge, I can remember
I kept
saying,
mine at my
I can
other
remember
one.
saying good morning to National Grid at 1 o'clock in the morning,
In Columbo.
so.
Okay,
As the phrase goes.
carry on.
All
But
right.
it happens all the time with amended plans, solar comes to us, we approve it or say, oh, well, we gotta wait till planning sees it, and then it goes to planning. Planning makes their changes, and then they come back to us, and then it goes back to planning, right?
But that's their fault. That's their bad planning in their project. So it goes to planning. Planning goes through the special permit conditions and does all of their due diligence, and they approve it. But it clearly says when they give their approvals, this does not mean that you're approved by other boards and you're gonna get a building permit. Then it comes to conservation. And at the same time, Board of Health signs off on their sheet, they have a chance to comment. there is a sheet that was being circulated for these projects for comments, and department heads want to comment. When Julie was here, it just kind of fell off. A lot of, we abandoned a lot of controls over the years of changing town managers or town administrators. And we need to get back into sync. And I have to tell you, it was impressive how all of the departments got together and got them there. It was very impressive. I've been in a lot of towns and I've never seen any municipal employee volunteer to take on extra work and do it with a vengeance. I mean, if it wasn't for the town, they probably might still have water. If it wasn't for the enforcement orders, they probably still wouldn't have water.
So we've got our 3 peer reviews, and yeah, let's just.
The question I had was, I was wondering how many actually people we reached out to? And did we only get those 2 responses?
Yeah, they were the only ones that were really came to our mind. You know, Bob had talked about GCG because they do Fairhaven, and Fairhaven runs a Hell on Wheels Conservation Commission. And I did speak to the guy at GCG, and he's been doing their peer review for quite some time. And I'm impressed with Bill Madden. I think he's a straight-up guy. I don't think he lies to us and deceives us and misrepresents things, but I'm not saying it happens here, but my experience in Uxbridge was, you know, we had engineers that we had nicknames. You know, one was the liar in chief, and another guy was this, because you just knew. They were full of it.
I mean, if you went to reach out to anybody else, there was a list that I had sent out.
Well, it's just, I mean, the prices are basically the same,
Yeah.
but I was just curious as there were more,
If you think of a third one.
how many people we actually reached
Well,
out
we
to.
talked about offering some work to Zenith, but Zenith does just maybe too much work in town.
Right, I would
Yeah.
hesitate.
And I kind of got handicapped
Today's good.
by the Nexamp thing with Beals and Thomas, because I didn't feel comfortable calling Beals and Thomas about a competitor of their client. I didn't want to make them think that I'm trying to get them to tell me something of what's going on there.
Who's the guy that works for Titleist?
That's GAF.
That's GAF, that's Bill Madden.
Yeah, that guy's awesome. I like that guy.
He knows, I actually think he's on a commission where he lives. I think he's a commissioner.
So Everett, would you like any more?
Well, that's,
lists?
I just, I mean, we're gonna do a rotating list.
Maybe 1 or 2 more.
One or 2 more would probably make it easier for everybody,
Well, it might speed it up.
especially the people that are doing the work.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
But
So have a look at that list that I emailed. If you need me to resend it, I have it saved. and then-
Probably have to resend it to you.
So, do you want to at least vote to add these folks for now?
Yes.
We can always amend the list.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because we're kind of in a jam.
All right, somebody make that motion.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have our list, and we add them to, and then the next, so if we're done with those 2 things regarding peer review, I want to move on to the senior clerk update. And so, save it.
Well, no, you know, we got through the logjam of the selectmen came to our meeting and endorsed it. I signed it again, it went over, and now Jamie Kelly says it has to go through the union, she has to get paid overtime. That's BS.
So as I mentioned to the commission via email, CC Joanne, I might have CC'd you too, I'm going to send a letter asking you,
As I recommended.
one of the selectmen, maybe as you, them through you, recommended that I have them add it to an agenda of an upcoming
Yes,
meeting.
and ask that the
I will
department
get
head
that.
go
I will
and
get
they can
that.
explain it. Let's put them on the spot.
Bob, will that be retroactive?
Yes, it's set up to be retroactive.
Nice, okay, at least that.
And I
At
think it
least.
comes, I think some of it is the fact that management of the town is upset about this United Steelworkers thing. And Jamie Kelly doesn't want to admit that we got something done. He's punishing me and punishing her in reality. But it's because I'm pushing the raise. There's no way in hell he's gonna do anything that Pat Hannon says. But the good news for us is we got notified yesterday that the town has lost their appeal on our forming a union, and we're now a union. We are members of the United Steelworkers Union. We'll be having elections to elect officers in the negotiating committee in the next couple of weeks, and we're beginning our negotiations. Now, I looked, there's a conservation agent job in Seekonk. I read the MMA job board every day in case there's something around the corner from my house. And they're looking for an agent, and the starting salary for their agent is $78,685. And the fourth year, it's $88,900 and something dollars. And it says, the minimum starting wage is not negotiable. This is a United Steelworkers contract. So I said to Joanne, go on the website and see if their clerical is under the United Steelworkers, and they were. A senior clerk in the United Steelworkers today is making over $29 an hour. A hell of a lot more than she's making, and more than double the $75 a week stipend that we want to give her. So come on, let's get
There's a
real.
little too much,
Let's get real.
too much nickel and diming happening here. So, yeah, I'll get that letter sent out.
That
We'll get
is
we'll get it on the
sad.
agenda.
Yes.
All right, so,
That's sad.
next item on here, stormwater. Are we gonna reopen this, or is this gonna be continued?
This is, I don't have an agenda in front of me.
Oh, so Nancy and Paul.
I haven't had time to call Mr. Haru. So if they'll agree with, I'd like to extend it, or, do they have any word from Mr. Haru? Do you folks have
So
any?
anyway, I'll read this. So continued public hearing, stormwater amendment to a previously approved stormwater plan, Paul Boucher, Nancy Durfee, 7 Morton Lane. File name is SE 001-0566. A request to amend a previously approved stormwater plan. I'll tell you what, I'll entertain a motion to reopen this hearing. Second. All in favor? Continuing, so a request to amend a previously approved stormwater plan was filed by Paul Boucher and Nancy Durfee for property located at 7 Morton Lane, map 14, lots 15H and 17. The applicant requests a review of the stormwater management calculations submitted by Hurrow Engineering LLC. The plan sketch submitted on July 22nd of 2022 by Hurrow Engineering LLC. Mr. Boucher, the floor is yours.
So we did some work out there. All right, we took pictures. The swales are in, the roadway, I don't have a lot of copies for everybody, but we can share.
Thank you.
So the stone swales are in. I would have to say probably 80% of the roadway is pitched and done, but we ran out of time due to the weather. So we're planning on having everything done by May and hopefully get you guys an as-built so we can get this thing done. So,
So what are we waiting to hear from Mr. Haru? Because I'm still interested in the storm drain, the roof drains being
okay.
hooked up, and whether or not we need a basin. That's what we've been waiting to hear from Mr. Haru.
I believe we have been under an enforcement officer.
We know you, but for the record, and I should
It's
have
Nancy
actually also
Durfee,
identified you.
7 Morton Lane.
Thank you.
We've been under the enforcement order that we've been trying to work with. We were directed at 2 meetings ago to do the road and the swale, and that is what we're doing.
Right.
Trying to get that completed. Weather caught up to us, which we probably knew that was going to happen. And we want to wait to finish the road and then come back with our as-built.
So I'll go tomorrow and check this out.
Sure. You can come out and check it out.
Yep, I didn't know you did it. I haven't gone there. I've been busy chasing soccer fields.
Yep, so, yes, we would just like to extend this until May, when we have it completed and have an as-built for you. There's nothing more we can do until May. Weather is not gonna be with us until then.
But we still need to hear from the engineer, right?
Yeah, this poll was put on because Haru was going to go through his calculations. He had spoken to Jamie Bissonette. Mr. Haru had misunderstood some of our stormwater regulation as required to the roof drains. They were going to do an existing conditions topo because Haru agreed with Mr. Bissonette, and this is what Bissonette told me, that you couldn't have done all that site work and not change the grades, and he just wanted to verify it. And Jamie explained more of our regulation. He hadn't read all of our regulation. And he wanted some time to digest it and see what he could do. But to leave this, to leave it, let me go see what it looks like. Let me go see what it looks like, if that's okay with you.
Right.
And, but I would like to see the roof drains get hooked up. You know, I go out twice a week and do roof drain inspections at every house in town. But they want an exemption from it and don't have them hooked up. And that's part of the siltation, you know, driving those, they're just coming right off the house onto the ground, there's no grass, we're not gonna grow any grass. And I'd like to at least see the roof drains get hooked up between now and sometime soon. I wouldn't wanna leave them over the winter, and it was the applicant that brought up the sensitivity of the, I never heard of an acidic fen or whatever it was.
Mhm.
But they've brought that up, that they want to be protective of the fen, and we're not being very protective of it if we don't get those controls.
Well, actually, the acidic fen is located at the end of Morton Lane, and the roof drains are up above and would not necessarily.
Well, they're traveling down the driveway out onto the road right now, because they're supposed to be going
Everything's
into it.
protected by a silt fence and hay bales. We've installed it all the way around the property. There isn't one thing that is eeping through. In fact, though our biggest mistake was the installation of the silt fence, there was never a time where any of the silt ever entered to the wetlands. Not one drop of, or a need for a heavy enforcement. We have not done that. We didn't install the silt fence properly, but we did not pollute the wetlands.
No one has said that you did.
I know, I'm not asking.
They're preventive measures.
You didn't, I wasn't asking, I'm telling you, we didn't.
That's good.
We didn't do that.
So then my quick question would be, so far obviously, so you're saying where the roof drains are going back as opposed, like,
No, they're
going
going-
west as
There's no
opposed to-
runoff from the roof drains, there is no runoff going anywhere. Everything's being contained.
I'll take some pictures of that.
Will that continue to happen once the erosion controls that are in there, which are temporary, come out?
No, because then the site will be stable and graded off.
We can't remove
Well-
the silt fence until it is stable.
Right, but I'm just wondering, I'm asking, based on Pat's comments, though,
Right.
if those roof drains happen, we know then that once those temporary silt, those erosion controls come out, this will never be an issue.
Well, that's why we're gonna be.
Right, and that's why we're waiting
We're
to hear
not
from.
there
Harut,
yet.
From Mr. Harut.
As far
Right,
as the
and-
roof drains go, we have a regulation that requires them to go to the collection system. Everybody else is installing collection systems. I go out and take pictures of them and give them to the Board of Health. We have a regulation that does not allow the over-the-ground infiltration in the type of soils that they have at their property. They have well-drained soil.
We have what?
Well drained.
Well drained? Absolutely not.
I'm wrong on everything I say at that, Joe.
No,
So, not much I can do for
So
you.
Pat will go out there tomorrow and have a look. We'll continue
Continue to the next meeting.
to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Well-
And I'll take some pictures and we'll see if there's been any runoff from the drain pipes, and if it's accurate,
Because
I
our
can consider that, but
plan is to have this whole thing done by May, in the timeframe. So, I mean, to keep continuing this every month, you guys probably have to continue it, but we're not gonna be present.
And you
So,
won't do it.
we just gave you an update what we got,
Right,
so.
okay. But you're gonna visit the.
On a lighter note, I've been going through my things, I had to move. And so, I found a letter from you when you were at Pleasant Bay, and your program that you did when I was at Bristol County Natural. That's how long we've known each other.
Wayback Machine.
Wayback Machine.
Wayback Machine, yeah.
So motion to continue until the next meeting.
So moved.
For more
Is it
information.
to
For more
the,
information.
to the next meeting or
Yeah.
till May?
No, to the next meeting.
Okay.
And-
Which do you know when the date will be, so we can just get it on our calendar?
25?
25.
11,
Yeah,
14, and
25.
25.
The 25.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also continued public hearing, and if any, looks like it's here for this one. So I'm just gonna read Costello. So I'll just read it. Do I need to reopen?
I would like to talk to you about Deep Brook Estate. So, I don't know if you need to reopen it to have a discussion, but maybe you do.
Yeah,
Let's play it. So motion to reopen
So moved.
Deep Brook. In a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, continued public hearing, stormwater. Joe S. Costello, Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G. A stormwater permit application has been filed by Jose S. Costello, for property located at Park Drive and Deep Brook Drive, map 17, lots 66 through 84, map 18, lots 12R, 12S, 18, 18G. The applicant proposes to construct approximately 2,350 feet of roadway with associated drainage and utility systems to serve a 15-lot residential subdivision. The applicant is represented by Jamie Bissonette of Zenith Consulting Engineers LLC. The plan name is Deep Brook Estates, dated October 24, 2017. And just a quick note, that number 15 is accurate. I know the last meeting, three different numbers came up. It's 50. So anyway, over to you.
So, the check did come in for the peer review. That's in process, but because it took him so long to drop off the check, he's behind the queue a little bit on some other projects that they're working on. So, I finally got the erosion control plan from Zenith. There was no erosion control plan for that job. And when the erosion control plan came out, it called for 12-inch wattles. Joe had jumped the gun and had his contractor install 6-inch wattles. And they're just not gonna perform in that job, and it was a matter of price. And I contacted Zenith. I mentioned to them that I had taken the CGP exam and I have some new information, and I wanted to talk to them. And he informed me that Joe had taken the CGP exam, and that Joe was gonna be his NIPD's inspector. Okay? So, I went to the site yesterday and talked to Nate Gomes, the contractor. And they told me that Nate Gomes took the exam too. And Nate Gomes has not taken the exam and is not interested in taking the exam. He doesn't know whether Joe really took it or not. But he said Joe has been there every week, walking around the site, doing inspections. So after all of this stuff popped up with the planning board and everybody with solar field approvals, I took a dive into the Deep Brook plans. That's a very complex job. There's like 4 basins and 2 different wetland replication areas. And I'm gonna tell you right now that Joe Costello is not qualified. I don't care if he took the exam. He's not qualified to manage that job. So Nate saw me get out of my car and take some pictures, and he came over, and I said, you got the erosion control plan a week ago, and you're working on something else. You haven't installed your wattles. And he said, Joe won't approve my change order to install the 12-inch wattles because he's gonna get a waiver from the Conservation Commission to use the 6-inch wattles. And that's just not gonna fly. The plan, the SWIP, everything calls for 12-inch wattles. That's what he needs to install. And then I told him about the CGP stuff, and that Joe needs to read the CGP and make sure he's in compliance. But we can't be babysitting Mr. Costello on a job like this. I mean, they don't call it Deep Brook for no reason. And there's a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of things that cost get built into it that Costello inherited. So I don't know what's going to come out of the stormwater review. He hasn't submitted an operation and maintenance plan for the stormwater review. I called Zenith and said we need the O&M plan and also the figures for what it's going to cost for 20 years of maintaining all of those basins and all the stormwater controls. And that'll be the next hurdle of getting Mr. Costello to fork over, $100,000 for a surety for stormwater maintenance. So, I don't know, where we're gonna go on stormwater, but it's gonna become an issue when Beals and Thomas gets through their review. And I don't think the owner of a project should be out doing his own inspection. So yesterday, I told Nate, and Nate sent him a text while I was standing there, asking for his inspections, his logs on maintenance issues, corrective action issues, you know, all of those things that they're just not gonna do here. So, that's where we're at. But the issue hasn't gone away.
Still a lot of work to be done. A lot of review work to be done.
A lot of going there every day and having to just stand there and say, did you do this? And the same thing happened with Nexium. While I was standing at 1050 Main, they're digging the construction entrance. Bates has one guy there. They're digging the construction entrance. I'm talking to the Nexium person because the person across the street was complaining. And Bates' truck shows up, backs up to the hole and dumps the rock for the construction entrance. And I said to the site supervisor for Nexium, I don't want to distract you, but we didn't put down the Marafi under the stone for the construction entrance. That's at the other job. All right, but the stone's already in the hole. So I drove out of town like I was going to Rochester, waited 10 minutes, came back, they spread it. They just did what they wanted to do. Then when you get to Cushing Lane, I got a complaint from one of the new members of the planning board that they were working in a wetland at Cushing Lane. I went there, Bates has a machine with what appears to be a wetland. There's a stream running by with a culvert. And I said, hey, you're working in a wetland? And he said, yeah. And I said, is there a replication? Yeah. Came back to the office, there's no replication. Went back to the job, told him to stop. Then I talked to the Nexium fellow, and I said, you know, you really need to be on the ball with these guys. He said, I work for an insulation company. He said, I'm just starting here, and any help you can give me would be appreciated. So I said, well, why don't you look at all your NIPTES stuff? And he goes, what's NIPTES? And I was done right there. So I believe that there's a wetland on the entrance in. Our new building commissioner was a conservation commissioner. He went and looked at it. He believes that it's a wetland. Nexium has agreed to have Beals and Thomas go out and delineate that area and delineate a few more areas in the site. And then they've got a problem with the separation from spring high groundwater. Their culvert that runs under the road, they dug down 24 inches and groundwater's at 20. We have perk tests for the house right next door. And this is a big problem for all these jobs. And the planning board didn't enforce the stormwater regulations until I took over as the stormwater agent. So from 2007 until 2021, everybody just did what they wanted to do.
Playing catch up.
And this is a big learning curve for everybody.
I need a motion to actually close the
Durfee.
Costello,
Oh,
D Brook.
To continue it.
Yeah, to continue it, sorry.
I make a motion to continue.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so, yeah, thank you for the updates.
Can you send us the SWIPs for any project that we have?
Got them all electronically.
Yeah, that'd be good, just so we can.
187 pages each.
They're all 187.
But they include the CGP, and sometimes they include the Clean Water Act. If you just read the beginning of it.
Right.
and-
Just,
and-
I just want to see the checklist and if there's a site plan for it, you know.
Yeah, there is a site plan, and there's the detail of the sequence and time of year stuff and all
Yeah,
of
if you
that.
could send those, that'd be great.
Joanne will do it tomorrow.
At your earliest convenience.
Don't go home, just stay right here.
I'll bring an egg with muffin.
Alrighty, so we got a few more bullet points here. Time of year construction restrictions.
Yes, so this came up in the internal meetings with the planning board. The planning board special permits talk about time of year restrictions for stabilization. The CGP talks about time of year restrictions and being able to revegetate within 14 days. I think that we need to consider that when we start putting conditions on these projects under a notice of intent, that we have a time of year restriction on when you can disturb more than a certain amount of acres of land, and I think that'll fit into our stormwater regulation and bylaw, if we don't want to dump it into the NOI.
Good idea. Any questions? thoughts about that?
No, I think it's
All right,
good.
next project performance bond, and we hit on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, so we have no recourse if someone goes in and blows a site out.
So, but what do you suggest, with dollar amount or percentage amount?
I think that our peer review engineers could tell you what they think the site work value is.
Mhm. And then,
So when I did a restoration project, the DEP was involved. We would put together the whole project cost, and I would provide a financial assurance mechanism that actually gets deposited with investors' trust as available funds. And DEP needs no permission to draw down on that. They just notify investors that someone's being unresponsive and we're taking 10,000 or 500,000 or whatever. We talked about it at our meeting today, and Jeff Blake's gonna look into that. Everybody thought it was a good idea, and it may be a better idea for the planning board and their special permit to put in a requirement for a performance bond. Because right now, all we have is a decommissioning bond for 30 years later. And these are bonds, these aren't cash sureties.
Yeah.
The cost of a bond, I don't know. How much is a bond these days, Steve? It was 2.5% when I was doing it,
Yeah, 2.5%.
so it hasn't changed. So it's a pretty reasonable cost. We have some solar fields in town that were forced to put up cash for their decommissioning, and they put up $170,000 of cash for 30 years. And that's absurd.
yeah, that is much. Okay. Stormwater bylaw, stormwater regulation discussion, we'll hold that off to the next meeting.
We're all solar fielded up.
Yeah. EPA construction general permit inspection certifications, that's you too?
Yep.
Yep.
And I would encourage all of you to go on the NIPD's website, find the EPA test. There's like 6.5 or 7 hours of videos that you watch. There's a knowledge test after each set of them. There's like 6, but 2 of them are virtual inspections where you go around and do a SWIP inspection. Ryan and I are kind of in the business. It was easy for us. Well, I'll tell you the truth. My 7-year-old daughter passed the first 3 sections of the NIPD's test. She read it with me while I was doing it. And the only tricky stuff is what's a corrective action, what's a maintenance, what are the timelines, what are the reporting requirements. And they have the same details for stabilization in the CGP as are in these SWIFts. And even if you don't take the test, it would be valuable information just to watch it. But, you can get 8 wrong. It's only a 40-question test. It's very easy. It's made so that EPA can say, you knew better and we're giving you a penalty. That's what it's made for. I believe that.
Next bullet is stormwater workload.
Yeah, so, we're going on with this thing with Joanne, them not wanting to authorize our
One
PAF.
person anyway.
And then the realization that this was a 35-hour-a-week job, we reduced it to 4 hours a day for both of us. And we're doing more than was being done during the 35 hours. And there's a lot of pushback from, I'm saying across the building, from this building. And we're at the point that we may just do our 4 hours worth of work, and you won't get any emails from me at 10 o'clock at night and 6 o'clock and on Saturdays and on Sundays. And these things are just gonna go further and further and further by. And management, the selectmen and the town administrator need to realize that the workload has increased. You were spending the money on the budget, and you have money in the Wetlands Protection Act to pay for these things. And either hire an assistant for Joanne to be in the office in the afternoon and work some of these things. I don't know. I'm not looking for a raise. I'm gonna get a raise when we negotiate our contract, and that's fine with me. But I keep busy, and I'm learning something every time I dig into these things, and Evelyn was asking me, well, you know, why the hell I read 700 pages or something on a weekend, and I just keep busy. So,
Couple of things here for agent updates. Silver Field, we've already talked about that. Everything's on hold right now. While all,
every solar field is on hold.
until all this, until everything.
Until all these departments get together.
Pavement,
Nice.
works in alignment with Andrew Lavola being the gatekeeper for all of it. That's the note I made.
That was what Jamie Kelly said today. My suggestion was that whoever approves it can't be moldable. And I spoke to Jeff Blake, and Jeff Blake knows Andy from Mattapoisett. Jeff Blake represents Mattapoisett. And he said that we're very similar. And Andy has no problem being firm. And that's good.
The last thing on a Hamlin Street update, we've talked a little bit about that. I know there was a the work supposed.
Yeah, I'm just
The
concerned
bridge has
that
been closed since the 9th now, just
Yes.
a couple of days ago.
Yep.
Pushed back from.
And we've got an out-of-state contractor who keeps insisting that the historic mill is an abandoned property. He wants to lay down equipment there. And no wetlands were flagged, nothing was done. He didn't even know what NIPTES was himself, and we got the pushback from MassDOT that I sent you and to Sarah Quintal, but Sarah dug a little deeper, and there are some restrictions on the job for specific reasons, so I'm gonna bomb that meeting tomorrow and show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff.
Anybody else? Business for the
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a real
I've
job.
been here a
I
lot
don't
of
know,
years.
if-
I've been
I
seeing
should have brought it up earlier,
stuff
but
like this.
when we did our site visit, was it 582, with the water line
Oh,
installed?
yes.
Maybe you guys could stabilize that dirt in the front yard, or whoever, or at least wait for the spring to seed it, you know?
Because the Walshes mentioned that they can't use their front door of their house because W.C. Smith did indicate they were gonna come back down and put an erosion control blanket and maybe throw
Yeah,
some winter
whatever.
rime
That's
on.
on temporary, just for the winter.
Yeah, because their son goes out to catch
In the
the bus,
fall.
he's gotta walk through mud and all this
Oh, yeah.
crap.
I like that.
So let's just finish the job. That's all.
Nice. That's the right thing to do.
Another observation there.
Yeah. Thanks.
And the other side is they're unhappy that they now have a water bill. No, really, that wasn't in their plan. And
That's sad. That's
the whole
pathetic.
event kind of took the shine off of their ownership of the property. When we met with them on Saturday, they're distressed about the whole situation. I think his wife wants to move actually. And I think it'll calm down once everything's done. She thought the cameras that they installed to see their discharge were aimed at her property, and I explained to her that it's a smart idea, that they can go online and see what's going on at their job at the basin. But they need a little TLC. So,
Yeah, understandable. So our next meeting is in 2 weeks, on the 25th. Seeing that there's no other business on the agenda or from our commission, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion we adjourn.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 8:20.